Welcome back to another episode of I Never Liked You with Matteo Lane and Nick Smith. And today we're talking about vacations. So Nick and I were discussing... Oh, God. Thank you for dressing up like Barbra Streisand, the Third's album.
You're welcome.
So we were talking the other day about the difference when you grow up rich and when you don't grow up rich. And neither one of us grew up rich.
Yeah, like vacationing as a child with families, with money, without money. Because like kids with money, they would go to like Sandals Resort or
Disney World. First of all, going to Europe. When I see
Europe, the Grand Canyon, like
when I fly to Europe, and I'm, now I can afford to go myself, but I didn't start going to Europe until I got a job, and then I could get money, and then I paid for myself to go. So I see entire families in first class.
Well, I didn't even get on a plane until I was 17.
Mm-hmm. I was 15 or 16 when I first went to Sicily.
Yeah.
Can you imagine being 4?
No.
And getting on a plane and going in first class and getting on a job? And not there's anything wrong with that if that's how you want to raise your kids. It's fine. I just am saying my childhood was so the opposite.
Same. We were talking about it with your mom and aunt. We would drive anywhere we went to.
We drove from Chicago to California to go to my grandparents' house.
From Pennsylvania to Florida. And I would,
you did the same?
My brother and I would alternate laying on the floor in the back of the car and the back seat, and then we would switch.
My friend Pat said, because he grew up in the late 70s, early 80s, and he was like, he's like, driving was usually my 2 parents in the front smoking Benson and Hedges, my 2 brothers in the middle both listening to boombox, and I was in the back with our 5 cats. So what was it? Give me a typical vacation.
So vacations for us, which again, I didn't think was abnormal until I got older and realized this isn't what most people do, is I'm from northern Pennsylvania and southern
Pennsylvania Dutch?
No, but southern Pennsylvania has the Amish.
I thought it was part of the north.
No.
Yeah. What was I seeing on carriages when I was driving from Chicago to New York the first time? We saw a bunch of Amish on the road.
In the north?
Yeah, because the road that took us there was the north part of Pennsylvania, near the
maybe
the
Mennonites.
Lakes. What's that?
They get mistaken for Amish.
Are they more like religious? Like
they're less rigid than Amish, but they're still
really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Mennonites pop up all over, but Amish are specific to southern Pennsylvania, and we would go and watch them. We'd pack up the car. My grandparents would go. My parents, my brother and I, we'd pack up the car. We'd drive down to southern Pennsylvania, check into a hotel. This wasn't a day trip. And we would go watch them. But other people would do it. Like, it wasn't just my family. Like, it's like a thing people do down there.
Well, explain to me.
They're big farmers. We would like drive around the dirt roads, park by their farm, and just like watch them.
You're explaining. I don't understand. Do they allow you to drive around on their farms just to go watch them?
Roads
this sounds like a petting zoo.
The roads are public. It was a fucked up safari. But then, thinking back, it was a really weird safari.
What would they do?
They're just farming. They're like plowing their fields and
do they talk to you?
No. And they're dressed in their little outfits, and we would go and we would watch them. And the girls would be at the tables because, like I said, we're not the only family that did this. A lot of people would do it. So at a certain point, the girls would have these like little metal tables along the roads, and they'd sell whoopie pies.
So you don't like whoopie pies?
I don't.
A whoopie pie is basically like a hamburger, but it's chocolate with cream in the middle.
Right, it's like cake almost.
It sounds good. When you buy a whoopie pie, do they talk to you then? What do you mean they don't talk to you?
I mean, kind of, but not really. Like, they're not having a conversation.
And then, so all day you would do this?
We would do it for a good part of the day, and then we'd go to the Perkins for dinner.
What's the Perkins?
Perkins is like a chain diner restaurant.
Is it a diner?
Kind of.
Like a Denny's, pretty much.
Yeah, it's like a slightly nicer Denny's. And then we'd go to the hotel and just swim in the pool. And that would literally be our vacation.
We
did multiple times.
When we were driving from Chicago to California, because my dad's parents lived in California. My mom's parents grew up next door. My dad's parents could not have been farther away from my mom's family. And so we drove there. And I remember we stayed at a hotel. We just talked to my mom about this the other night. Because we stayed in a motel, and I remember asking my mom why. There were 2 beds, 2 for my mom and dad, one for my mom and dad, one for me, my brother and sister. and the beds had like you put the quarter in, and then the bed shakes. So clearly it was like a by the hour motel for people, sex workers, or just people cheating on husbands, wives, or drugs,
massage therapists.
And my dad said that he was like scared, and so was my mom. But I didn't know because they had a pool, so we swam in the pool. But the whole thing smelled like diarrhea because it was next to a cow farm. So they like had all the manure or whatever. So I just remember asking my mom, like, "Ma, why does it smell?" She's like, "Oh, it's just the cow poop." But I remember that. I was 5 years old. I remember that. And we drove to California. I'm like, it was so...
I didn't even go to the West Coast until 6 or 7 years ago for the first time.
Well, I just thought flying was like a rich person's thing. I didn't realize that.
Because it kind of...
Well, it was.
Especially back then, it kind of was.
Right.
Now, there's discount airlines and everything, and basically anyone almost could fly. But back then, it really, if you couldn't afford it, especially afford it for yourself, but you, your spouse, your kids, your grandkids, like it adds up.
Yeah.
And so it just like wasn't a thing. We would go to Florida and visit my grandparents in the retirement village.
Did you ever go to Disney World?
We did, apparently, but I was like 2 or 3, so I don't remember it.
I never been to Disney World or Disneyland.
I've never been to Disneyland.
I went to the San Diego Zoo when I was little because when we drove to California, we went to the San Diego Zoo, which when I was older, I got a private tour of it. Oh. Now, vacationing as an adult. So you just got back from a vacation. You, Dakota, went to the exotic Philly. Mm-hmm. So I want to know, like, what qualifies for you to like be to vacation as an adult? Because now I have specific.
Well, what's weird is growing up vacationing. We would vacation based on family or friends where they live. So we would choose places to go to where we could stay with people or see people. It wasn't just like, let's go to California. We know no one out there.
But that's something that I did in my early 20s too. I mean, I remember I would never stay at a hotel. I would only go somewhere if I needed someone to stay with. Because of that, it's
sort of ingrained. So now anytime I go on trips, it's always like, to Richmond to see my friend, or to LA to see Bob and them, or to Florida to see my grandparents. So like, it's just still ingrained in me. So I want to.
Well, how was Philly? How many days were you in Philly for?
I was there too long. It was 4 days. It could easily be a day trip, maybe one overnight trip. If you're from Philly and you're watching, I give you a solid 6 out of 10. I'm sorry. I just do. There were cute parts. Maybe I was there too long. Hi, everyone. We started a podcast Patreon, so be sure to join. We're releasing bonus episodes, clips from our live shows. We're getting feedback from you on podcast topics and much more. Be sure to join at the link in the description of each video or go to patreon.com/INeverLikedYouPodcast. But so vacation, I would say.
People from Philly are tough. Keith Robinson is going to come after you.
I'm tough too.
Reggie Conquest, Monroe Martin, all my friends from Philly are going to come after you.
Okay, well then show me a better time in Philly.
Well, what did you do in Philly? Did you research anything about Philly?
We went to the zoo, which they don't have elephants. We went to the Rocky Steps, which I did. It was actually easier than I thought.
You lost breath halfway up the stairs, and you had to hold on to your back.
I lose breath halfway through a podcast episode.
That's true.
We did a lot of walking around Rittenhouse Square, Washington Square Park. We saw the Liberty Bell. Saw
you look like
Independence Hall.
Designed the Liberty Bell.
I was going to say, I fit in really well. I basically modeled myself off of
Did they think that you were like
Jefferson.
a person that, like when I went to go see the Titanic Museum with Rodrigo and his family in Tennessee, everyone had to dress up like a maid on the Titanic. And so you could see the humiliation in their eyes because they're like, hi, everyone, welcome here. This here's the Titanic. Now, before you move forward, you will have earphones that will tell you what you're going to listen to. Now, by the way, that museum, that our vacation, because that was, when you hang out with Mexicans, you will leave the home at 8 a.m., you will come back at 12 a.m. They go hard. So we left to go all the way to the mountains to go like axe throwing and then like go up a ski lift. And then we had dinner. And then we, on the way back, went to the Titanic Museum. We were the last group in.
Oh my God.
So we all the way in. We're just gossiping in Spanish the whole time. But anyway, it's humiliating to see like a 16-year-old failed theater major or a 21-year-old failed theater major just dressed up like a maid in the Titanic, and the biggest exhibit in the Titanic. First of all, they were playing the music from Titanic, the movie, the whole time, which I was like, it's enough with Celine. And then the ending was a kid
drowning.
No, he built a Lego version of the Titanic, and they had a light show based around the Lego. Mm-hmm. They had a thing you could put your hand in to feel how cold the water was. So like, this is how cold the water was, and you put like your finger in it. You're like, okay, guys.
That sounds like a nightmare. Nowadays, I mean, vacationing for me, I'd like to do it more. I'm not necessarily a beach person. I just like, I don't know. I like to. Vacations for me is more going with people.
Can we put up a picture on the podcast of Nick sitting on the rock? It's on Nick's Instagram. It's him laying on a rock. Can you tell everybody about
Actually,
that?
that is a fun story. I went with my friends to Maine, and we go to this lake, and there's all these families, and we roll in, and I'm in one of my, I think it was in a visor maybe, a sun visor or sun hat, I don't know, gay. And my shorts, and I looked emaciated as normal, and all these kids are like climbing on this rock and jumping off it, and we're like standing, we're laying like in one of the areas, and everyone just kept looking at us the whole time, and we were about to leave, and I was like, I cannot leave until I get a picture on that rock. But the kids wouldn't get off it, so I Jack Skeletoned on over there, and I said, can you all move so I can get a picture? So they're all hiding behind the rock as emaciated Ariel is on the rock posing with all their parents just like, but I got my picture.
There's certain things I can't do now when I vacation. For example, like when I was like 17, 18, my friends Mark and Chuck and Caesar and Carrie and Sophia, we'd all go to, my friend Chuck had a beach house on the Indiana Dunes. And
the what?
The Indiana Dunes. It's like, whatever, it's a beach. So we would go, and then we would go to a grocery store. It's on Lake. I have 3 minutes to tell this story, and you don't know that there's a lake. Indiana touches Lake Michigan.
That doesn't mean there's beaches. There's beaches by the ocean and the seas. Why would there be a beach on a lake? Of rocks? Like a rock of rocks? What are you talking about? Was it along the river? And why are they dunes? Was Timmy and Zendaya there? Like, what are you talking about?
You are the worst person to listen to a story. I've always hated you.
Finish your story. You have 2 minutes. You were at some beach in a landlocked state. No, I believe you. Tell your story. Drink your juice, Shelby. This is the dumbest thing I've ever... And you all call me autistic.
So I want you to see here. This is the Indiana Dunes National Park. And I want you to see that there is a lake. This is Indiana. And then as you go in, you can see that there are miles and miles and miles of beaches. But
it's sand?
So I'm going to explain to you. So sometimes when there's large bodies of water and there's land, sometimes you can put sand there. And
Someone put sand?
No, sand is usually created by years of erosion from rocks, and so
in
it's
the
small
ocean.
rocks. So how do you think the water in the ocean works differently than water in a lake?
Because in an ocean, there's waves and currents. In
You think
lakes,
there's
it's
not?
just...
You think that in Lake Michigan, which is one of the largest lakes in the world, you think there's no waves? You don't know that waves have killed people in Chicago on Lakeshore Drive when
I'm
a
not
big
familiar with the death rate in Chicago. I'm sorry I didn't study up on that before this episode.
You think that Lake Michigan is perfectly
Well, no, I guess
still.
there are
a
waves
giant
there.
You think
But
people who go
I don't
surfing...
think of sand in lakes. Isn't sand like... What is sand?
You can find sand in, I don't know, a kindergarten room in a sandbox. I assure you,
Yeah,
you
but
can put sand.
put it there, so that's what
Look
you're
at Dubai.
saying.
They are building islands out of sand.
That's the desert. That's a good point. How do deserts have sand when there's no water? That's a good point.
I'm sitting here for the next 19 seconds in silence because you
Let us know in the comments. How are there sand in the desert if there's no water?
Maybe it used to be a place that was full of water or whatever, and then it dried up. Or wind. I don't know.
See, you don't know either.
Deserts have
Lizzo?
sand due to the breakdown of rocks through weathering, the removal and transport of finer particles by wind, and the deposition of sand in areas where the wind loses energy. This process is ongoing, continuously shaping and reshaping desert landscapes.
Thank you for watching and listening to another episode of our podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, join our Patreon, and please leave a review. Until next time.